What is going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of Bull Chat with Randy Paddock. So, just kind of get this stuff out of the way. Remember, please, if you would, when you check us out on iTunes, sorry, my fan was making a crazy noise, um, share it if you would, rate it if you like it, leave comments, all that stuff helps, is much appreciated. Also, make sure you check out the YouTube channel Bull Chat Pod. Go ahead and subscribe to that, share it, comment on it, or whatever you do on that. If you want to follow me on social media, Randy J. Paddock on Instagram. We have a Bull Chat Facebook page. I got my normal Facebook as well. Snapchat, Randy or our Paddock or the Paddock or something. All that good shit. So sorry, this fan, I put it on and now it's like making weird noises, so you might hear that throughout. It's been a little bit since I did a podcast. I did one about my 34th birthday, so that was around May or June. It's been about a month, and this one that I'm doing today, I wanted to kind of wait a little bit. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not do it, or if people would like it or not, but I figured what the hell, might as well give it a shot. It's just kind of, so if you don't know about me, I like to read stuff, mostly nonfiction stuff. I like history, I like military history, things like that. So I've been doing a lot of reading of that stuff lately, and just about kind of some crazy shit that's happened in the past, and not the most positive things. And then just in the world, if you notice that that kind of stuff's happening more and more, some dark things, right? Be it shootings, be it suicides, be it random acts of violence, be it you know war things, war crimes, be it terrorism, whatever it is. So I kind of figured I might want to give a talk about that, because all the stuff's been going on in my brain, just about the darkness. So I don't want you to get it twisted. I'm a very happy person. Check it out on YouTube, see that smile. I'm a very positive person, but I think that you got to know about the crazy shit that people are capable of. Individuals, groups, cultures, anything. Like, you have to understand that. You can't live in a little bubble of everything's always great, or there's only problems over here, over there, that won't happen to me, or whatever. Like, the world is an awesome place, and there's a lot of awesome shit. It's beautiful, right? There's a lot of great things, but there's a lot of darkness in it as well. So that's just kind of some stuff I wanted to hit on in my thoughts about that a little bit, because to truly appreciate that good stuff and the light and all the awesome stuff, you got to know the kind of the flip side of the coin, and that's the darkness that does exist out there, and it's something that exists in everybody, so you including. So I made up some notes, and there was, I will kind of go off it as we always do. So the beginning, like, people in general are capable of extremes. You know what I mean? And I think, most people are in the middle, right, when it comes to anything, right? The averages, average Joe, whatever. But then there's going to always be outliers and people that could be extreme. So this is a good thing and a bad thing, right? So you have, like, people that do extreme good things, right? You have, like, Mother Teresa, right, going and living in Calcutta with, the extremely poor, and sick, and doing God's work out there, right? You have, people that help people out during hard times, right? You have, like, the Underground Railroad during slave times, right? You have, people that step up and do things, right? Sully, right? They made that movie about Tom Hanks landing that plane, in New York so it doesn't crash. So people can do extremely great things, right? But on the flip side of that, people can do extremely terrible and dark things, and again, it's something we're all kind of in the middle. So I think we all have greatness in us and light, and I think that shines through, and we all do things all the time. It might not be crazy extreme, but I guarantee you do nice, good, light, kind, awesome shit all the time, and you don't even think about it or know it. It's usually just doing. We also all have a little bit of darkness in us. Most of us do not go to the extreme, but we all have things about us that we know are a little off, or, it can go into thoughts that we have. It could be violent, it could be acting out, it could be self-destructing, it could be just something strange, but if you don't realize that human beings in general and part of the human experience is the good and the bad, the light and the dark, and that there's a spectrum, if you don't think it exists or you're blind to it, you're going to be fucked. Right? You got to be realistic in with yourself and with the world and with what's going on and just in reality. So just remembering that people are capable of the extremes. So keep an eye out for them, right? And follow them, good and bad, but also know that most people aren't going to be the extreme. They're going to be in the middle somewhere, and that's where you and me usually lie. So let's think about extremes for a minute. First, I want to talk about like groups. So I went to school for sociology, so like group dynamic and why groups do things is something that's always been very interesting to me. But if you think about it in history, about like certain groups, and not even that far of history, it could be fairly recent times. Like, so I just jotted down a couple that like popped into my head that like it's like mind blowing shit. Like, how the fuck does this happen? So like, obviously, I think the front runner for everybody when you think of like extreme dark group is the Nazi Party pops into your head. You know what I mean? And it's very true. There was this book, Ordinary Men, and I listened to Jocko Willink did a podcast about it, but it talks about the whole fact of what I just kind of hit on, that most people are ordinary. So it's about this Nazi like police group. They were part of the Nazi Party. They weren't quite, you know, good enough to be the soldiers or like in the SS or whatever, but they're like military people. And it was about how they went to these different places and they just straight up murdered people, like execution style, on the knees, boom, back of the head, shoot him. And like how these were like ordinary men, right? These were people that were like teachers and like construction workers and lawyers and accountants. It's like all these random people. These weren't trained fighting machine soldiers, and they fucking fell in this group dynamic of like mass murder, right? And just if you think about the whole thing in general about that, like it's you can't really wrap your mind around or believe that everybody in Germany in the 30s was a fascist racist that hated every human being on the planet that wasn't an Aryan, right? It's like, why do they do these things? How could they go along with an idea? You know, and I think that it goes into most people are, you know, most people are followers. We all want to follow somebody. So like, you got to understand that and you got to be cognizant of that. And when it's okay to be a follower and to follow people, but you got to know what the fuck is going on. And you also got to be able to, you know, go against the grain if need be. So it's nuts. And reading about the Nazis and things like that, you got to know that shit happened, you know, like the Holocaust, obviously one of the most crazy things on the planet, but not even that, because that's the extreme, right? And things don't just go from 0 to 100. They don't go to extremes. Like, it started off with like, you know, kind of shit that we used to see in America, right? Back in like segregation, right? Like, you know, Jewish people can't sit here, can't drink out of here or go here. And then slowly but surely taking rights away. Then you're in a camp, and then it's a work camp. And the next thing you know, you have the final solution going. It's how many motherfuckers can we rack up? And it's nuts, but things can always escalate. And if no one's there to call out bullshit, or you can't recognize it, oh, this is a little bit off, that's how crazy things happen. Because no one ever said, like, there's no way that, you know, 6 million people are going to get murdered by some dude. Not going to happen. Not here. Fucking happen, right? I also read this book. It's World War II as well, but it was on the flip side, because I think a lot of the times when you think about atrocities and crazy stuff in the world in World War II, the Nazis, obviously, like I just talked about, they go to the head of the list, but like the Japanese were fucking nutty too. I read this book. It was called The Raping of Nanking. And what it was about was Nanking was like the city in China, and the Japanese invaded it during like World War II times and took it over. But what they did for a couple of months was like, it's tough. It's hard to talk about. And it's not even a book I would suggest reading, because these people, it's like the most disgusting thing that I've ever read. It was like hard to read it. I'm not going to read it again, you know. And if you want to read it, like, you got to know that you're going to get into you're going to feel weird and stuff, because what these guys did is they went around and they just fucking demolished everything. Like the things they would do to people, the way they would kill them, if it was burning them, burying them alive. They used them for like bayonet practices, right? Like the stuff that happened to women I can't even talk about, you know. But like just terrible, terrible, terrible things, right? And again, in all this, so and no one's stopping it, right? And in the beginning part of it, they would like the Japanese journalists or like in newspapers be like this like glorious thing that was going on, and it's fucking disgusting. But even in that like crazy darkness, there was some light because there was some European and American people that lived there in China that set up safe houses and would fight off people, to protect and save people. So again, an extreme will produce another extreme. But like it was crazy. The woman who wrote it, again, she got so involved in the darkness of everything that she was about became about that book. If it was doing the research, if it was interviewing the people that lived through it, she then went on like book tours and talks where she would talk about, the book, and people would bring up other crazy shit that happened to them. So she was so engulfed by darkness and craziness and this bitterness that she ended up killing herself. You know what I mean? Like, and she was extremely successful, had a family, that loved her, husband, kids, and that, because if you do not know what's going on, or you can't put a stop to it, or you can't bring the light in, if you just absorb all this shit, you're going to get turned out. Another one is like the Rwanda genocide is like another fucking crazy thing. And if you don't know about it, this was in the 90s. So like if you're my age or a little bit older or even a little bit younger, like you were alive during this, you might not even know about this shit that happened. But there's two major tribes, in Rwanda, and one tribe decided to wipe out the other one, right? Ethnic genocide. And they did it via fucking machetes. So a good book, The Killing Season, is all about that. And it only happened for like a month or so. Um, and so what they did is there was a call for all the people of the one group to kill all the other ones. So they just went out with machetes, killed them all. Men, women, babies, didn't fucking matter. If your wife was part of the other tribe, you killed your wife or somebody killed your wife, right? Because there was like they all lived together. It'd be like me marrying, someone of a different race, or even like another person, but that's like not my background of Italian Irish, right? That's like Swedish, Norwegian, and Czech or something like that. And then that's my wife. And now we hate these people. Boom, gotta kill them, right? Brothers, family members. So like this crazy shit was going on, and they were doing it with machetes, like a gnarly way to do it. And while this was happening, America, we were like on the coast on a ship, not doing anything about it, like letting this play out. You know what I mean? And like, it's crazy what people can do, because again, you can't think that every person was like, fuck yeah, I want to go kill people with machetes. Right? Like, that's not even like shooting someone, that's some like up close personal stuff. But they end up doing it. Why? Because we all can have that in there. And if it's not manifested in the right way, and there's different leadership or group mentality, it can go bananas quick. A similar thing happened in Bosnia. Obviously ethnic genocide there with the Muslim population, like crazy stuff. And these are people that are your people, in Bosnia and in Rwanda, you know what I mean? Like, these are your neighbors, these are your people. Like, you might not be 100% with the backgrounds, but it's like crazy close, and they're your people all the time, and it's trying to wipe out a whole race. Like, that's fucking terrifying. And again, with Bosnia, it wasn't that long ago. And the way that people would kill people, like the way to think they would get rid of them, through gas, through execution, through just the different types of murder. It's nuts what like people's brains can go to when you have a goal. And if you think about that, that's nuts. Because again, if you talk about like that spectrum of great things and bad things, it's all goal oriented. You can set goals to do great shit. Goals are extremely powerful. And this is coming from someone who didn't have goals for a long time. But they could be very powerful to put you in the right direction and make some shit happen, fucking change your life and be awesome. But think about this. One man's goal, and let's say Hitler to eliminate a whole race, if you're driven enough for that goal, he almost did. Motherfucker almost took over all of Europe and almost took out a population, right? In Rwanda, the goal was eliminate these people. In Bosnia, the goal was eliminate these people. And then they just went after it. And if you share your goal and your vision with enough people, both good and bad, things will start to happen. I know in some of these, cases, people are forced to do things, but after a while, you can't use that as an excuse. You're making the choice to continue to do it. And then I was thinking about like other crazy shit, like Vietnam stuff. So like the My Lai massacre, because you can't leave America out of this list, you know, in Vietnam, like it was a crazy war. I don't like I know anything about it. Some of us might have parents or grandparents that were in it, but like in My Lai, like the lack of leadership and the lack of anyone setting up to the right thing led to a bunch of pissed off, worn out American troops been fighting a war that most of them don't believe in, might not be properly trained, not have good leadership, and they just take out all their aggression on a village of people that weren't fighting them. It's fucking terrible. So even the best country in the world, we're not above bullshit if there's not good leadership. And again, if you don't know about these things, you got to check them out. You can't turn an eye. These are people that are normal folks that turn into straight up savages, rapists, murderers, fucking killers, man. And like that was in that case too. That could be your brother that just got drafted, didn't want to go to war. Next thing you know, he's shooting a civilian in My Lai. So if you don't educate yourself about these things, and as uncomfortable it could be, you always have that kind of mentality like, yeah, but it wouldn't be me or anybody I know, or nah, that's not possible. You have to understand what can happen. And then I just listened to this podcast called Martyr Made. It was this big part episode, this like 6 series, these long podcasts, and one that's still raging to this day, and that's fucking in Palestine, right? Jewish folks, Arabic folks, and just getting after it every day. Fucking nuts. One group doesn't like one group. We all have our ideas, so we get after it and we kill each other all the time. And like it's in people get supported by our country, by other countries. Like this shit's just happening all the fucking time. And everyone's so dug in on their goal, on their thought. And like I said, if you can get pinpointed on some thought so much, it's easy to go to the extreme and justify things good and bad. Because if my goal is this is my land, this is what's up, you guys got to get the fuck out of here, I can justify doing a lot of things if I think I'm entitled to it. And that's kind of what's going on in Palestine on both sides. So it's nuts. And think about it, you've probably had that too, especially like when your brain's not as mature, and like think about like when you get fixated on a goal, maybe the first person you were quote unquote like in love with, right? Like you were so fixated on him, if you've ever, or maybe not even the first person, if you've ever been, obsessed with somebody, because everyone has at some point in time, you've had an obsession with another human being. Like you might drive yourself to do irrational things. It might drive you to do like rational things that are awesome you had never thought. Like it might make you romantic when you're not very romantic, or you might, go above and beyond and do great things, but you also might do dark things. Like, I don't know, it's why like stalkers exist, or like jealousy exists, or sometimes it turns into violence. Like for a person that normally might not do these things, if you don't know that that darkness is in there, and when you're fixated on certain things, that there could be a good and bad, and you not know how to control it, that's how crazy shit happens. So group mentality, be careful of it. It's okay to follow, right? Majority of people are going to be followers, but you got to question things. You got to question everything, and sometimes that means you might take a hit from it. But you got to know who you are. You got to know what you're about, and you got to stand firm. All it took in My Lai to end it was one guy's like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop doing this. Everyone stop doing this right now. And everyone's like, all right, cool. That was it. Stop killing people. Stop raping people. Just because someone stood up and said, what the fuck is going on here? What are we doing? That's it. Like, that's all it takes sometimes. But again, we're so kind of used to following. You don't want to stand out, or everyone's doing it. Why not me? That we might not be that guy. Be that guy. So next I want to talk like individual. Because again, there's like so much individual shit going on right now. So a couple examples I have here is fucking school shooters, right? Like, I've been alive 34 years, and like the amount of school shootings I've seen is like, it is nuts. And I'm not talking about gun control. I'm not talking about mental health or whatever. I'm just talking about that kind of stuff, like the wanting to act out, be violent. It's in everybody. And it can manifest itself in different ways. So I'm not making any excuses. I'm not saying what's wrong. I'm not picking a fucking side. But there's perfect storms. Again, a lot of these people that are school shooters aren't accepted by society or bullied or something like that. So think about this. That's darkness turning on darkness. If you're a fucking bully picking on someone weaker than you, or if you've ever done that before, that's darkness in you because that shit ain't fucking right. And everyone's done it. It's like a natural thing. It's like a hierarchy, I think, right? Maybe it's part of us, being mammals, you see it in like the ape world, but people always get picked on by someone bigger and badder than them, and then they want to return the favor and fuck with someone else. But if you're sitting here saying, I've never done that, you're a fucking liar. Everyone's been a bully in one way or another. If you said something mean about somebody, or if you've physically done something to somebody, or anything, because it's in us all. And it's probably happened to us, so we think it's okay and we justify doing it to somebody else. Well, like those school shooters are the extreme. The darkness of people putting the wrath on them ends them to ending and just fucking justifying, you fucked with me, here we go. And it's nuts, right? Like, think about that. If we were all kind of more in check with our darkness, like, maybe we wouldn't be such fucks to people, be more accepting and not judgmental. Maybe these things could be prevented. I think that's what the problem is. It's not how they do it, in the matter they do it. If someone, again, has a goal and is possessed by the goal, they'll find a way, if they have access to things or not. Right? Like, you gotta think about it, going back like the Palestine situation. Like, back in the day, the Arabic people, like, they didn't have crazy weapons that the Israeli folks did. So what they did, you start suicide bombing. Like, you figure out ways to do things. Where there's a will, there's a way. Again, that cuts both ways, good and bad. So it's not necessarily what they have access to. They didn't have access to it. There's different ways that people can do things. So school shooters, it's crazy. You think about that motherfucker in Vegas. Why do I think about him? That asshole had the same last name as me, so there's no relation. But think about this shit, this fucking guy. Like, it's crazy. Like, when people are out having a good time, that there's some person out there that's so engulfed with the darkness that they'll just start randomly killing people. Or people that walk into fucking movie theaters and start lighting it up. Like, it's scary to think that going to awesome places or doing fun things could relate with that there's someone out there that's so fed up with everything and so engulfed by the darkness that they're going to take the wrath out on the world. And if you don't know that that shit exists and stay aware, that's how you fall victim to stuff. Like, you have to be aware that there are people walking around right now in your city, in your street, that are on the teetering point of going fucking ballistic. And maybe an interaction that you have with them could teeter them one way or the other. So what's the harm in maybe giving them a smile? Maybe saying what's up? Maybe opening a door for somebody. Right? As opposed to maybe another cold look, or maybe flipping someone the bird in road rage that they go home and they kill their fucking family because that teetered over. And you think, well, that's pretty extreme. That's life. That's what can happen. When you're in situations, you have to be aware of what's going on. If you stay ready, you never have to get ready. So if I know that there's psychopaths floating around this planet, I can always kind of pay attention to things. And that's not like a paranoid thing. That's just survival 101, man. And you got to know what the fuck is going on at all times. So, like, just think that, like, that people were in Las Vegas having a good time at a concert, having a good time. Next thing you know, people are getting picked off by a guy that seems quote unquote normal, right? That's everybody. Everyone's normal until you dig in, and then they're like, oh, he's got this, he's got that, he's got the other. That's the darkness. That's in everybody. All right, and then it goes in that fucking kid in Charleston, right? Walk into a church, lighting up a place. Nuts. If there's anywhere you should feel safe, I don't care if you're religious or not. Like, a church is pretty high up there. Is like, this should be a safe place to be. But again, in this world, nowhere's safe. There's no shelter anywhere, unfortunately. Even in your own home, right? Because there's a motherfucker that'll invade a home because of darkness might be. Maybe it's a drug problem. Maybe it's a money problem. Maybe it's something negative where they find a goal, the extreme they have to get, and they go at any means necessary. And the brain is crazy like that. Your subconscious mind will get you what you want. It's up to us to set parameters, right? To set the rules. But if we don't, we'll do anything. And you've probably seen yourself doing that before. Maybe your goal was to get a good grade on a test. You weren't prepared and study well. Maybe you cheated on the test because your goal was to get the good grade. You didn't set the guidelines, so you did it. Maybe you cheated on somebody because your goal was something. Maybe you hurt somebody. Right? If you don't understand that you have to set rules and you just have a goal, you can go to an extremely bad place quick, and it's justified because it's the goal. That's why I think these type of things happen. individuals. Yes, society creates individuals, though. So we got to understand, you got to be aware. And what's the harm trying to make that a more positive thing and impact someone in a positive way? Even acknowledging people. Like, we're all walking around so much like our shit don't stink and we're better than everyone. Not making eye contact with people. Don't look at people in the streets. Don't interact. Making people feel fucking worthless. Think about that next time. Next time you don't say thank you to someone or excuse me, or maybe let someone in traffic, that you might be that teetering point, and that's the impact you can have on somebody's life, or maybe a situation of who the fuck knows. Then the last thing, guys, was like internal, and I got to thinking about this a lot because pretty recently, like a bunch of famous people were killing themselves. I remember like Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain went like back to back. I was thinking about all these people in recent history that have their shit together, successful, killed themselves, right? Kate Spade, Bourdain, Robin Williams, Chris Cornell, Chester from Linkin Park, like all these people that you would think have their shit together, have money, have success. I think it goes to the old point, like money can't buy you happiness, and that's what life's all about. Is like you can appear on the surface to have it all together, and everyone, this no human escapes darkness. You have to understand that, and I might be repeating myself, but it's that important to understand. Even if you have it all together, there's going to be things that make you unhappy, or things you're not confident about, or goals or things you might have where you didn't set any guidelines, so you start drifting into a weird place, right? You could be surrounded by people but still feel alone. You can have all the money in the world but still not feel fulfilled. You can have a great family but still not feel loved. Like this is the human experience. This is the human brain. We're all a little fucked up, and we think different things, and we create our own realities. And the further we can, we sink into these realities we create without anyone pulling back or without us expressing it, that's when bad stuff happens. You know what I mean? So you got to really understand that is like sometimes what the reality that we're living in isn't real. It's real to us because perception is reality. But have you ever done that before where you keep telling yourself a story that might not be 100% accurate, it might not be 100% real, but you tell yourself that story so much that it becomes a reality and you project that reality. People do that shit all the fucking time. I think it's like a type of like escaping. We like to escape. That's why a lot of people do drugs, a lot of people get fucked up, get hammered, do whatever, because real reality is fucking tough, man. Living is hard. It is. Life's tough. There's going to be extreme highs and extreme lows, great things and disappointment. There's going to be, all kinds of stuff. And if you're not prepared for that and you don't know how to handle that, it's easy to want to escape that. You gotta not. You have to try to stay in reality as much as possible and learn how to roll with the punches to ultimately feel great. That's my 2 cents on it. So, and I'm not trying to bum people out about all the bad stuff in the world. I don't have to do my job of that. Turn on the news. You won't hear anything happy until the last 2 minutes when they'll show you a puppy dog. Other than that, especially here in Chicago, it's another violent crime. It's another motherfucker got dropped, another murder, another 3 murders. It's the politicians are ripping people off. It's another scam. It's something terrible, right? And then the world news, always something bad, something bad. So I don't need to bring you down, and tell you how shitty things could be. It's already out there. But you have to understand it, and you have to educate yourself. And don't just live in your bubble. And don't just think things are problems somewhere else, because those problems that are somewhere else are here, are in your neighborhood. No matter where you live, if you live in big city USA or if you live in small town USA, the shit's there. It's hiding in plain sight. So I got a few tips maybe on how or what you need to do, or what I like to do to help with this, to try to keep yourself sane, on the right and narrow, living a fucking awesome life. All right, because first and foremost, you have to know the darkness and know how shitty it is to really appreciate the light. Because like I said, guys, that darkness is everywhere, but guess what, Jack? That light is everywhere as well. There's beauty everywhere, in everything, in interactions with people, in nature, in acts that people do, in random acts of kindness, in anything. And if you know how bad shit could be or how terrible it could be, you can really appreciate that. It's like in that movie Fight Club. I don't know if you ever seen that, but they go into the liquor store and they pull the guy out and they put him on his knees, hold a gun to his head, and they pull his fucking ID out, and Brad Pitt's talking to him. He's like, "What do you want to do with your life?" He's trying to figure out his goals, and the guy said his goal was to be a veterinarian. He's like, "Well, why aren't you doing it?" And he's making these excuses. It's tough. It's this and that. And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Here's the deal. You have 1 month." He's like, "I can." He kept his license. He's like, "You have a month. I know where you live. If you're not on your way, to being a veterinarian, I'm gonna get you." And he lets the guy go. And then Edward Norton's like, "What the fuck did you do that for?" And then Brad Pitt says, "Tomorrow that guy's breakfast is going to be the best tasting thing he's ever had. Like, he's going to see the best sunrise ever. He's going to inhale the air because he was close to the end in the darkness." And I think, and then he'll appreciate the light. So I think about that sometimes, guys, is that when you educate yourself and you know about these things, then your life doesn't seem so bad, and it's easier to appreciate the awesome things going around, even if it's walking around your neighborhood and seeing something like, "Oh wow," or if it's like seeing someone in the street and like a smile, or if it's appreciating how kind that people can be to one another. You'll really appreciate it, and then when you appreciate it, you want to do it more. But you got to know one extreme to know the other. So one thing you can do, you got to learn about it. You got to learn about atrocities. You got to learn about bad things. You have to stay educated. And unfortunately, I fall in the trap of this stuff sometimes myself, is that I get bummed out watching the fucking news. So I stay apathetic sometimes and avoid it, but just sticking your head in the sand doesn't relieve problems. So as uncomfortable or as shitty as it might be, sometimes you gotta know what the fuck is going on. Right? Sometimes you gotta read these books about past, about history, about things that have happened, because if you don't know history, it can be doomed to repeat itself. That's what they say, and that's true. Things happen all the time. Right? So it might be uncomfortable to read, or it might make you not feel good, but that's a good thing. If I'm reading this book about people doing terrible shit to people and I feel like shit, I know I still have my humanity. Right? You have to know what people are capable of. Next, you have to self-reflect. You have to know what you're capable of. You can't, be naive to yourself, and anytime it comes to self-reflection, you gotta be careful. You don't want to beat yourself up too much, but like, you got to be real into what you are, what you're capable of, and what you're not capable of. How you are you changing? What can you control? What can't you control? Are you going down a slippery slope? What kind of path are you taking? Like, you have to take time to reflect this. I do it sometimes through writing. You can do it just sitting through thinking, but also just checking out your habits and seeing what you're doing. And the choices I'm making, are they constructive? Is this leading me down a path of destruction or lead me down a path of something great? And you can't be blind to it. So sometimes maybe you got to get advice from other people. You got to have that open, free mind to hear people. Sometimes, you don't want to hear shit about things that you're doing that might be off or weird, and it takes someone else to tell you. You got to be able to take that and not get defensive, check your fucking ego at the door, and be able to make the change. If you can't if you can't really know yourself truly, it's going to be tough. And that's how you go into that dark place or can do crazy shit and have a justification. Because I'm not that guy, I would never do that until you're doing it. So self-reflect. Do this a lot, right? Michael Jackson talked about it. The man in the mirror. That's what makes the change. Look in the mirror. Assess. All right. Next, have an outlet. So there's a few things as a human being. We're prone to violence. Like, we're a violent culture. So I think it's good to have like a violent outlet. So it doesn't have to be like hitting things, although that's a good one. So be it maybe boxing, some kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, just any sort of physical activity. But it could also be weightlifting, right? It could be running aggressively, right? Swimming. It could be doing a triathlon. It could be doing a Tough Mudder. But doing something to get that aggression out. Because again, we all have it. And you know how you feel after you leave the gym, or maybe after you leave like a jiu-jitsu or a boxing class or an MMA class or something. Like, you feel light, you feel relaxed. You don't feel like going like, fuck you, if someone doesn't let you in on the next traffic light. You're chill, oh yeah, don't let me in, it's cool, I'm gonna let everybody in. You're more relaxed because you have that outlet. So have an outlet for things, right? So maybe it's talking about it. It's not like 1950, right? Like, for men or whatever, it's okay to talk to people. For women, it's okay to talk to people. Like, So if you have a friend you talk to or a family member, or sometimes like a professional, but if you know you're starting to have weird thoughts or something might be a little off, like talking about that with somebody and bouncing ideas off people or just having someone to listen, that can help because you're getting it out, you're not internalizing it, because the more you can internalize it, you're creating that fake reality, and that can lead to justification of you doing something nutty. So I have that physical outlet, I have that mental outlet, right? And then also I have an outlet sometimes so I don't just read books about horror and dismay. I'll read like a fiction book of something fun, or I'll have an outlet of watching the Goldbergs or some Seinfeld or hilarious comedy show, or I'll go see a real comedy show. So then I have the outlet of the light as well. I'll walk around, look around, and appreciate things. I'll write down gratitude, right? Things I'm grateful for. It's a phenomenal outlet to remember to focus on positives and great things. But you have to have an outlet. The more you keep stuff in, it gets tight. And you feel that you can't breathe until it's time to execute. And that's how crazy shit happens. Or it's how you're open to a lot of influence from, a group. And that's how you can find yourself maybe doing things that you wouldn't normally do on your own accord. But these people seem like me, so I'm going to do it anyway. So you got to talk about it, as well. It's like having chats, talking, verbalizing, right? So you learn about it, you talk about it, you self-reflect, you have different outlets. Once you have all those things going on, motherfucker, it's time to make a choice. Right? There's this old like I don't know what you call like fable or wise tale. It's about, I might have talked about this before, but it's about this Indian, he's got the black wolf and the white wolf. One's the joy, the happiness, the light, the goodness. One's the anger, the despair, the destruction, the darkness. And the young warrior asks him, which wolf wins? And he says, whichever you feed. And it's very true. You make the choice. Do you want to feed the light or do you want to feed the dark? And we've all known this before. We've all been depressed, bummed out, or you want to not talk to anybody. You want to just keep the negative, piling on the negative to feel sorry for yourself and this, that, and the other. That's a fucking choice. And if you react negatively towards others on a choice you made on that, you're a fucking pussy. That's just a fact. If you're sitting there throwing that pity party and deciding to just keep adding onto your own shit so you can feel bad and justified doing something terrible, fuck you. All right? I got no nice way to put it. You're making that choice. Right? You can also make the choice, on the other hand. Feed the light. Feed the goodness. Positivity. Smiling. Understanding. Right? Detaching from things, not doing emotional. Right? Using common sense. Making good decisions. Being responsible. Being disciplined. Being caring. Being empathetic. Having your outlet, recognizing the darkness, and knowing it has to be fed, but I'm going to feed it by going and rolling with somebody, or hitting a bag, or lifting some weights, or doing a run. I'm not going to do it by randomly punching some motherfucker in the face because he looked at my girlfriend a weird way. Fuck you. We're on this planet together, man, and there's enough bullshit around, and there's enough darkness around, so know it, and then make that choice to not be a part of it. It's going to be in you. You got to deal with it, but don't feed it so much that you're a part of that problem. We only get one time around. Why live in the dark when you can live in the light? It's something to think about, So think about it. Be aware. And when you're out and about, be aware of your situation. Stay on your toes, knowing that, good, I'm living the right path. I'm feeding the light. I'm having a good time, but not everybody is. And those people that are in that darkness and that despair at the turning point are everywhere. So be aware of it. Know what's going on. Don't put yourself up to be a victim of someone else's bullshit. Take stands for things. Live, love, be happy, have fun, dick around. Do awesome shit. But don't be naive to the fact that there's some crazy shit out there as well. Learn about it. Know about it. Talk about it. Realize it exists in everything. And then truly appreciate the flip side, the good stuff. Live an awesome life, have a great time, make great memories. That's what I got, my friends. The darkness, it exists, but so does the light. Find that light. So until next time, y'all, we're going to go ahead and put this one in the books. Have a good one.